What kind of super ager are you? Go to ageist.com/quiz. Take the super ager quiz, and we'll send you directed, personalized information to help you super age the best that you can. I'm David Stewart, and welcome to the Ageist podcast. I started Ageist to champion people like us, to ensure that we can feel informed, healthy, and proud, and age well. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping you age better. And who doesn't want that? Today's show is brought to you by LMNT, spelled LMNT. Go to drinklmnt.com and get yourself a free 8-serving sample pack with the purchase of any of their electrolyte drink mixes. Today's show is also brought to you by Timeline Nutrition with their breakthrough product, MitoPure, the first clinically tested urolithin A supplement, which is showing tremendous results for mitochondrial health. Go to timelinenutrition.com/ageist, use the code ageist at checkout, and save 10% off your first order of MitoPure. Today's show is sponsored by Fatty 15. Fatty 15 features the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in 90 years and is on a mission to restore your long-term health. Go to fatty15.com/ageist, use the code ageist at checkout for 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit. Welcome to episode 222 of the Ageist podcast. This will be dropping on February the 5th, 2025. Great to have you with us today. We are going to be speaking about plastics, microplastics, especially where they are in your home, how to eliminate them from your home. We have Jill Czarnik with us today, who is an expert on cleaning up your home, how to take care of your water, how to take care of your air, how to get those microplastics out of your life, because we don't want those in our bodies. We're going to get with Jill in just a moment after a quick word from our sponsors. Did you know that just pounding water all day is not going to keep you hydrated? You need the right mix of electrolytes in that water to help that water be absorbed properly and also to help your body function well with the right electrolytes. Element, LMNT, contains sodium, potassium, and magnesium, which are critical for helping our brains and our bodies function. One of the unfortunate facts is as we get older, it's harder to drink water, essentially because our thirst response is diminished. So we need to put extra emphasis on drinking water, staying hydrated with the right electrolytes. Of course, if you are pre-hypertensive or have hypertension, check with your doctor before having anything with sodium in it. For the rest of us, though, Element is a great solution. Go to drinklmnt.com, that's DRINK, LMNT.com, and get yourself a free 8-serving sample pack with the purchase of any electrolyte drink mix. Today's show is brought to you by Timeline Nutrition and their product MitoPure. I started taking MitoPure after I ran their science through our science review board, and they were very enthusiastic about it. In fact, most of the people on my science advisory board and their families now take MitoPure. So why do I take MitoPure? I take it basically for health span because, the truth is, I want to be 90 and I want to be able to ski and hike and play and do all the things I do now. Think of MitoPure as these little Pac-Men in your cells, chomping up the damaged mitochondria that make you feel old and tired and recycling them into new, healthy ones. And mitochondria are our cell's power generators. They're a key influence in how we age. However, as the years pass, and I've passed a few years, mitochondrial efficiency naturally declines, representing a large gap in the quality of life we can expect in our later years from the ones we actually experience. So do what I do, and do what my science advisory board does. We take it every day. You're going to notice a difference in 4 to 6 weeks. Timeline is offering 10% off your first order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/ageist. That's TIMELINE.com/ageist. Get 10% off. Hey, Jill, how are you today?
Great. How are you doing, David?
I'm wonderful. So today we're going to talk a little bit about consumerism and our overdoing of it and how that's affecting our health and our home. And before we get into that, I want to learn a little bit about your background. How did you become interested in this?
Yeah, love to share. So a year ago, I started the Tribalist, and that was right out of working in AI at a technology company. During that same time, it was sort of right after the pandemic, me and one of the executives at the company had these separate but alike experiences in life where we started rethinking what we bought. For me, it was spending time overseas in Europe, realizing a lot of the products and cosmetics and things I was using were a lot better on my skin, eczema prone, etc. Started going down that path, realized there were a lot of things that were harming me in beauty and cosmetics. My co-founder, him and his wife, they're in their 50s. They were going through just, they're in the longevity group, right? So they were thinking, how do I maximize, like, I'm into my health, I'm into my nutrition. And they started looking at the same way of remodeling their home interior and organization, realizing, why do I have all these bad products for me? And I'm not just talking food, like the way manufacturing has been done and cheapened, whether that's through the buy of private equity, et cetera. And I overconsume in doing that. It doesn't feel good. I want to have a better space. So somehow me and him converged because we at work just talk about everything and started thinking about through these trends of like living in Europe. And I was sort of digitally nomadic, so minimalist. And then thinking about him going through his home in Palo Alto minimalist journey that we're like, life is just better. And like, we need to bring this to other people to simplify. And when you look at the average American home, there's stuff everywhere. Everyone has a decluttering problem. You could look at the Google search of decluttering in the last 30 years. At first, it was like a crazy world. They think about like organizing, but now that's the norm. So long story short, we kicked off a year ago, a lot of on the ground research with people. I'm like, how do we convert people to know they can live better and healthier lives by choosing better products? And it goes so much beyond organization, which we'll get into more on microplastics and what we're doing there. So that's me.
So interesting. Let's go into microplastics and why are these in our world and how do we deal with it?
Yeah, it's a great question because they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere in our world, but then they're also nowhere because we can't see them. And that is the exact problem that it's like COVID, but COVID, you could actually see the instant, when things were bad in COVID, people got sick, so they made changes. With microplastics, there's not that impact. It's invisible and we have them in us. We, as of this year, you probably have read it's in every single organ now has microplastics. I know when it was published around microplastics being found in your testicles, there was a rise in consumer awareness. And then the study in August to the medical study around finding microplastics in your brain. Okay, so we know we're clear on that. But the problem is with microplastics is that there's this cumulative body burden on we are just ingesting them. And there's different data now. There used to be a credit card per week that was recently revised. Huberman said it was reduced down, but in any case, we're consuming this actively just by living our lives. And this is because there's been chemicals added to our products. And in the last, I think it's 50 years, there's been 80,000 chemicals that have not been regulated. We know 1,500 are linked to cancer. The other 79,000 might be. But there's really not the regulation we think is in these systems. And that goes much beyond food. It goes beyond even your toothbrush. It goes to your deodorant, your tea, the plastic bottle you're drinking out of. So it's really just been this like accelerated by the rise in consumerism and the rise to cheapen goods with things that aren't good for us.
What do we do?
Well, there's multi-layers to this. Ideally, it starts with legislation, right? Like we need to, at the federal, state, everything level, there needs to be laws in place for manufacturers. We know that's not going to happen overnight. So there's a lot of complexities and incentives in our systems that will make that very hard to do. So that's where me and my co-founder thought about this, how do we make someone feel empowered that it's not this, well, what am I going to do? And then we've sensed that is the reaction most people have these days is like, that's too overwhelming. So thinking about that, we've packaged up, well, let's take a look at your life and your habits. And it can even be as simple as like journaling in a day. What are you making coffee and tea in that morning? Where is that source from? What toothpaste are you using? What skincare products are you using? So it's simplifying your routines and building a life around in your home that starts in your home. Because once you go outside of your home, you can't control everything. But if you can eliminate a few key sources, that will move the needle in your body over time. And that cumulative body burden of which leads to health consequences, whether that's, the link to cancer, what we're seeing in kids and hormone disruption. So it's really about taking things down. I also compare it to like drinking. Like I'm not saying go sober, but, don't have like 8 drinks out next weekend. So being mindful of where you can reduce that exposure. And sometimes they're really simple switches, right? People don't realize tea bags have thousands of microplastics in them. they don't realize the same for water bottles. And they're very easy swaps sometimes. And it's also like, don't feel guilty if you are out and you like had to get Starbucks and it's a plastic lined cup. Well, you're doing your best in all other areas of your life. Maybe you've gotten an at-home RO filter, you've gotten an air purifier. So tactically, it's like all habits, beginning with a few simple steps and figuring out, what works for your routine, your health. And that's where we try to package it up, where we'll try to work with you on giving your key swaps. And from there, if you want additional education, we can continue to work with you on, how to reduce microplastics in your life.
Okay. So you mentioned a bunch of stuff. So I want to backtrack a little bit here. What's an RO filter?
Reverse osmosis.
For your water.
Yeah. There's no regulation at this point in terms of municipal water purification. Nothing filters for microplastics, right? And you can go search what's in your water, but it's never going to tell you. RO is the best bet you can have that you feel like you're getting the most out of your water source, which is, key to life.
I live in a rental in Manhattan. So having the plumber come in and like redo the plumbing for an RO system is sort of intense, right?
There's options. I've worked there's a few apartments in New York I've talked to, well, one including me. There's a countertop option. And then there's another way, a lady in Greenpoint we just worked with. It's an under the sink attachment, probably costs about $200. Installs in 10 minutes, you could transfer it. So I always think the same thing. I thought of what you just described as, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get a plumber. They're gonna like undo everything under. Yeah. There's a lot of options. Water filtration is a beast. My co-founder he's very specialized in the filtration for water and air purification, but there are a lot of solutions out there for where it's like, any budget, any size home. And also like, what are your goals, right? Like you could spend thousands and do like what you said, like do the whole house and, have it last for 10, 20 years. But yeah, the countertop works fine. I could give you a link. It's like $250 and yeah.
Yeah. All right. Definitely. So send us the link and we'll put it in the show notes because I want one of these. It's a little ridiculous. I have a plastic thing with a filter, like a plastic jug with a filter that filters my water. And I'm just thinking like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So
yeah, no, most people have Britas and it's one of those things like, well, I bought it. I think it works. I don't know. So that's one of the key moves, thinking about, it's not just like your stuff, but what are you breathing in? What are you drinking? And trying to be like, I'm in control of my home. So at least, whatever happens, I travel, I go out, things happen. I'm going to be mindful of what I buy in plastic packaging. But at home, I know I've created a healthy environment.
And so with air filters, we're talking about HEPA filters, right? Is that?
Yeah, primarily. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's also just due to like, what are you most concerned about in your home? We don't necessarily start there. A lot of the times we usually start like thinking about like your kitchen, your bathroom, and things you're touching and putting on your skin every day or putting near your mouth every day. Because again, water and air can get so detailed and so customized based on where you are in the world, how big's your space, what are your goals. So we do like complete SEP and like full deep dives just on that topic versus, if we want to just talk about kitchen, bathroom, it's very easy to go through and make some swaps that are going to be.
You also mentioned toothbrushes.
Yeah. So the bristles on certain toothbrushes, that also is where microplastics can come out. The same idea, if you think of like, if you close the cap of a water bottle that's plastic, that little, the friction of that can come out.
Oh, okay. And then you now I'm going to be too scared to get out of bed in the morning. So tell me about, and you said coffee. So I just have I've got like a machine and I put beans in it and
might be okay. When I say coffee, it's more of the pods. How do you think of applying heat, right? Like the most basics of like microplastics 101 is like, don't heat anything in plastic, right? Like heat applied to anything, even with like, if you were applying lotion that was warm to your skin, heat's just going to absorb more. So when I refer to coffee, that's for, maybe the Keurig folks that think, putting hot water through the K-cup, which is literally plastic, is, convenient, but convenient at what consequence, right?
Right. And we just learned about the tea bags, which I thought were just these innocuous things and not.
I love that you said that because someone else just commented, like, I don't know if it's because you just told me, but I'm seeing it more in the news. That and the black spatula, I feel like are the new modern plastic straw. That like the thing people love to hate, And I'm like, in my perspective, like I've been trying to reach out to the Wall Street journalists that published the black spatula. So I'm like, that's that's one of like 200 things you need to start thinking about. I know you've talked to in your episodes about, nonstick, what things are coated on that you're heating up too. So it's, I don't want to say funny, but interesting to me how these little things catch on. But there's this bigger perspective of like, well, why do we have this stuff that's bad for us? And I don't think if it's just tea in the black spatula, like there's got to be someone else here too. But the tea is interesting because even the bags that don't even look like the mesh ones, which are the ultimate offenders, even the paper ones, those are often coated in plastic too. So you could only really be safe if you do the loose leaf. Or, I guess we're in this like age of consumers where it's just hard to trust labels. So you can see a brand that might say organic, and in your head, you think organic. So that's just automatically good or bad. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have, links to other chemicals in it. And we're seeing other positive developments too. I don't want to be just negative about, brands that are hurting us. If you saw January 1st, California now has legislation passed that any baby food product, there's a QR code now that links, where is it linked to metals or added, or what's in there. And it's like a supply chain look through. So there is some hope in these products, but right now I think we're in an interesting time as a consumer I compare it to how we thought about food 5 or 10 years ago. And we started thinking, oh, USDA organic. And we got really label obsessed and ingredient obsessed. We're now in that era of consumer products where we're more reliant on, I want a third party opinion. I want to go to the environmental working group, or I'm going to use, if you haven't heard of the app Yucca, YUCK, it came out of a incubator in Paris. It's been pretty popular in New York the past 6 months. They've been investing a ton. People are relying on others to tell them if something's good for them. And I don't blame them. That's why I exist too.
It's complicated. In talking about supply chain, I read a report out of San Francisco about, I think they analyzed like 700 products with plastic, and milk came up really high. We were like, well, what's up with that? Because the apparatus that they attach to the cow, the tubes are plastic. And so you've got this like warm milk going through these plastic tubes. I read that and I was like, oh my God, like I have recently in Utah, and in Utah, you don't have to use copper pipes. You can use polyethylene types. I said polyethylene is like the flexible tubing, not for your drain pipes, but for your actual water pipes. So you don't need to use copper. So it's easier, faster, quicker, cheaper to build. But I don't think that's such a super awesome idea.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the supply chain and having that conversation is, again, for the average consumer, too overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think my recommendation is just be more suspicious of who you're buying from. If they're larger brands, be more suspicious. That's what we're trying to build right now in terms of our own database to be able to look through. Sure, we have the supply chain, but there's also other factors like, did a private equity recently buy them? That's might be an indicator they've diluted the quality. So it's what you want to focus on. But I would say if you are very paranoid about, where things come from, especially milk, if you're a new mom, even if you're just a regular person, it doesn't sound good, but especially with, new moms when, children are more susceptible to these things is, pay the extra dollar just to get something locally made where where that product came from. So the farther we've become from the products, the more, we don't know what to expect. And we've kind of had this trust for a long time that's now being broken.
Yes, super interesting. So, okay, you got me scared of like tea bags and toothbrushes, and now I've learned I can do a
deodorant too. I saw a recent deodorant link to breast cancer. So, but deodorant's been a hard one to get people to do because they're like, I'd rather smell than, I'm like, oh gosh.
I'm not affiliated with this company, but there's one called Pit Paste.
Paste is an alternative that's pretty safe. That was part of like when I was in France, I would buy a lot of the products there and they had a lot of good pastes there I used. There are still brands here. It's again, like the balance of sustainability and health where the brand I use for deodorant, it still comes in a plastic deodorant thing. So I'm optimizing more for my health and saying I'm zero waste in that case. But there is a movement I've seen more on deodorant where they do try to advertise, but we're still stuck in that same scenario of, well, it says it's vegan and cruelty free. Does that mean it doesn't have plastics in it? So I've even resorted for a lot of products now. I even go to Etsy or I'll go like if all else, if you can't read what's in it, right? If you read the ingredients, just like if you read food and you don't know what the name of the thing is, I wouldn't want it in my body. So
Right.
that's the best advice. Or even with the rise of ChatGPT, which is partially what I've built my model on, you can even upload a photo or copy and paste, upload it to ChatGPT, ask it, have these ingredients been found in any link to some, health consequence in the last 10 years? And that's been a hack too, if say like the database isn't accessible for you when you're out. I've done that just as like a cheat.
I can see how this can very quickly become overwhelming. That especially when you get into food, you're thinking about, okay, nutritional content of food. What are the negative consequences of just that? And then you get into all right, heavy metals, pesticides, things like that. And then the next level is the plastics. And it's like, I'm just going to be paralyzed. Really, should I eat this grapefruit or not?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, they're all like, if you follow, obviously try to buy organic, especially it's like, the dirty dozen rules, so the stuff that is more close to you want to buy. But even that now, if just to back up on microplastics, so if you think about it, like they've permeated us, but they've also permeated the earth. So if stuff grows in the ground, the
Right.
ground has microplastics. So there's really no safe zone. And I'm not trying to say this to scare anyone, because again, I think it's like there's a certain level of just trying to avoid the really bad things for us, where we know we're always going to pick up, we breathe, like most of the microplastics come from tires dust. So like when being on the road, just being outside. So we can't avoid that. But the more we can preserve, just being a little more conscientious of labels that are things you can read, products that are made from natural materials, from our kitchen when we're thinking about stainless steel, when we're thinking about wood, thinking about these like the things our grandparents had that we got rid of to be more efficient and convenient, bringing all that stuff back. And then to our closet, right? Like natural materials, we can get into that. If you wash something that's made of synthetic materials, well, it's great. It was like $20, but now that goes into our water supply. So I think once you start connecting, like it's not just fast fashion and like I have to give it up after a few times. This is just going to permeate the earth, and then the earth, it comes back to you in your food. Yeah, it's a lot. We are in an overwhelming time, and that's why I think my focus on what I'm building is that at least you can know your home is safe in a world that's uncertain.
Right. You need some, exactly.
So that's where
Exactly.
we think the timing and, the other political things that are happening now and distrust and everything. It's like, this is a time to start rethinking and recreating our own space, our habits, things we consume. And I think it's great. Like there's like different brands you can discover, supporting like smaller businesses, supporting people who want to make good products for you, not just the profitability. And I also, with the trends in media and the way, we are able as consumers to have a voice today, I do feel optimistic that we'll be able to communicate these things to start making bigger changes and influencing not just where our dollar goes, but influencing legislation and influencing, that we don't want to be, what I am working with this one doctor, he's at NYU and he does study this stuff for 10 years. He's quantified it down to like the economic impact of like if the IQ decreases from microplastics, what does that mean for society? And it seems optimistic that like people are starting to listen, and people, I mean large corporations, and taking like this is serious.
I'm remembering, I think we both saw that same report from San Francisco about microplastics and the 700 foods.
Yeah, he's like the raviolis, the Annie's raviolis, all the soups in the plastic. Yeah, yeah.
It
It
was
went viral on Twitter. It had its moment. Yeah.
the boba tea. I don't know. That was like, it was like crazy high. Like, okay, but I couldn't figure that one out. But then the stuff when you get into like Big Macs and like that kind of food, so like a fast food burger, was in the 10,000x.
Yeah.
What was
It's not consistent, because the irony of that is like, well, Big Mac's bad. Taco Bell's actually been doing a lot of good stuff, and like Taco Bell's fine. So you can't even apply like relative theory on like, oh, I'll avoid fast food. Okay, I think it's a good guardrail. But there's like these weird, there are like, and I call them out as like, and where it's like, well, I think if McDonald's that, wouldn't that be bad? And with all this said, I think what has helped me the most is like, how much of this stuff do I actually need? Like, I need to just think about like simplifying my life,
Right.
because if I just simplify my life, then I don't need all these extraneous things. I don't need 10 serums and 5 day creams and then you unwind that and start thinking, well, marketing's always told me what to want. What if
Mm.
I reset and think about how do I define my routines, my habits, and what I actually need? And how much do I own that I was told to own? And that's the biggest thing. Like, we know, and that's where we're at this intersection of home organization and health. Because when you start going into health, it's organization, you realize 80% of the average American home, 80% of the objects in them were never used or used once. So that's where we're at this like intersection of like decluttering is still part of sustainability and still part of like home health, because if you get rid of all this stuff you didn't need, it's less stuff for you to manage, which is this whole conversation of wait, I actually don't have to be as stressed out because I have fewer things to be stressed out about. And I'm not just talking about clutter, talking about their negative impact on being in my home. Back to your, carpets can furniture have VOCs and permeate. Like, you have fewer things and you look into the integrity of the product, fewer clutter in your house and fewer thoughts in your brain about, is this gonna impact my child or impact, my health.
So, what are some of the things that I should perhaps be paying a little more attention to that I'm not?
Yeah, I think we covered. I mean, obviously the water thing is huge. If you can get into like a reverse osmosis filter, you've mastered we talked about coffee, tea, water, making sure that's not from, like a plastic source and organic. And then the biggest thing, I mean, I'm speaking as a woman, but like stuff you buy for in the bathroom that you're using. So like toothpaste, I would convert to like a tooth powder, which sounds weird. Shampoo and conditioner, actually that permeates your skin more because of like rubbing it in. So switching to like a bar. And these are all things like we all did this before, right? Like shampoo didn't exist decades ago. We had bars. Like toothpaste never, like, that's an invention too. It didn't exist. So it becomes this cool curiosity spiral. But I personally would start, a little bit in the kitchen in terms of the things you're doing routinely: water, tea, coffee, packaged food. Actually, like, do not microwave, any of that. But then get curious about the bathroom products, and hopefully as a man you have a simpler routine than me. But those are huge because like that's going into your body. The skin is the largest organ of your body, right? So thinking about what's the swap, and the swap is usually what your grandparents did, or your parents' generation. It's it worked. It wasn't broken. We tried to improve it. We made things worse. Yeah.
Okay. And before we came on, you mentioned this image that I really like. We're like cactus in a rainforest. Talk to me.
Yes.
What does that mean?
The cactus in the rainforest. I just had an image to put up. So we are the cactus, right? We kind of just need water a little bit, not too much, or we die. It's the same idea of thinking about consumption. The rainforest Amazon is ironically, the rainforest sounds the same, but we are in this society of overabundance, and we're being hurt by that. We don't actually have that many needs that the rainforest, the amount of vibrancy and nutritional things that are in it. Like, we as a cactus don't actually need that, and it's hurting us. So that's when I was telling you about the like life redesign on, instead of being paranoid about all these things you need to control in your life that you're exposed to, if you just look at your life and try to design like, what are the habits and routines that I need to be successful, have a great day, and live, what I want to accomplish today, it gets rid of most of that stuff, which is the rainforest. And a cactus then is happy. It just has the water a little bit every day, and it's fine. It doesn't want the rainforest.
We've both been in Europe recently, and that was, I mean, people buy things, but it's just like a different level of consumption overall.
Yeah. And it's like, you look at the happiness studies beyond just looking at health. But speaking to that, I mean, living in Europe was part of the influence that made me look at this closer. I mean, why, especially back to the makeup and skincare and products, like, 3,000 chemicals are banned in Europe, but only 8 are banned by the FDA, 4 are restricted. That doesn't
Mhm.
feel good. Like, I don't think it's different because it's in Europe. And the consumption, like the focus on quality, and I'll say this because you also spent time in France too, right? And it just feels differently when you you're touching something that's of high craftsmanship. You can feel that. And you come back to America, and I had this experience too, like the reverse culture shock of just like, this is all kind of crap. Like, it's not the same. And the other takeaway, because I think there's a lot of mixed emotion on, well, to be sustainable and what you're talking about means you have to be wealthy. Well, I think the average salary in Paris is like 55,000 euros a year, which in New York would be like well below the poverty line, yet we're unhealthier. We also dress worse, maybe. That's a different topic. But I do think it's possible, through looking at their lifestyle in certain ways. I mean, the cigarette thing's another thing, but there is something interesting even with the food and what, the food goes bad sooner. That's great. And, it's not meant to last. And that's the same thing when you think about applying that to when does this product go bad, or why does it last 5 years to have shampoo and conditioner? Oh, well, they add phthalates to it because that's like a stabilizer. What does that link to? Oh, that's linked to cancer. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to buy something on Etsy that expires in 2 months, and that's a good thing. Same thing with like the milk, right? I'm going to buy it today. It was made today, and it's not going to last as long, but I'm going to last longer.
That's right. Like every couple of blocks in Paris, there's a place that breaks bread. There's another place that's a vegetable store. You have the cheese guy, and
I love my cheese guy. Oh, I wonder if we went to the same place. Right?
That's like what you do, right? You just go out and you have a bag and you get your food for the day. Maybe you go to the next day, but that's it. You're not buying a week's worth of food at Costco. That you don't do that.
You want your bread to go bad, and bread is something. Again, I don't advise too much on nutrition. I do try to focus just more on the home environment, aesthetic design, picking better choices. But like bread preservatives, terrible. Terrible. It doesn't matter if it's whole grain, right? Like you don't want that. But I think part of this process that I think is really cool, like making your own bread or making your own yogurt. I'm not going complete hippie here, but it's actually not that complicated. We've just been sold such a convenient way of doing things. It's hard to think about being, what I'd say, like producers again. We've become full consumers. And to start making this switch to being more like tactile and like, I am going to produce, or I am going to go to the store, and it's actually not an inconvenience to go pick up the food for the day or to pick up the things that are going to last longer because I know they're better for me and it's a better lifestyle for me. So it is a total habit change on how, we're run as Americans today. But I do think we're at this point of being burned out both by consumption, by technology, and I do see this cool trend of, slower living or aspirationally shopping locally and, farmers market or aside, I do think there is this interest of people being saturated. They just haven't fully been able to articulate that need, but it's starting to show up more and more.
What are your feelings on interior paint? It's sort of a random question, but I'm just thinking like in terms of
that has chemicals mostly in it. Yeah. I haven't done too much of a deep dive on it, but I read up that, I mean, that's where you can get overwhelmed that literally everything can be coated in something. But generally speaking, most paint will have some type of chemical.
Yeah.
And that's where I intersect, where I think, there's the home design, like the built environment of what you bring in. And then there's the actual building you're in and thinking about, well, what are, from the countertop to sustainable windows to, how you're bringing in natural materials. That's a whole other, I mean, even if you think about flooring and stuff that's coated, it all is.
Formaldehyde, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Jill, for those of us who don't want to spend our time paralyzed and freaked out, it sounds like they need to speak to you. How would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we are renovating our website to switch to more of a direct-to-consumer offering. So I'd say the best bet is to email me directly, Jill at the Tribalist. We are going to have the launch end of next month, which will give you the concierge, like upload up to 10 photos. You've probably seen this other AI tools, right? You upload photos. Maybe it's for your new LinkedIn photo, but in this case, it's for your plan on how to make some swaps to feel better and upgrade your home health score. And that's a place to start. And I just love education in this space. So the more you can follow other folks that put content out, like Environmental Working Group. I follow Ken on LinkedIn. He's great. The Yucca app for now is awesome. If you're at the store and you're like, oh my God, what sunscreen should I buy? 98% of sunscreen is terrible. You can have that in your pocket. So yeah, shoot me a message, jill@thetribalist.com. You can also check out the website, which will be updated at the end of the month, thetribalist.com, and open asking any questions you have, feedback. We are just here to help you feel more educated and empowered. As much as this conversation, felt like the world is coated in plastic, there are things you can do, and it like the awareness and actions, just like if you were starting a diet or starting a new habit, just thinking about it. And we kind of say, you'll know when you've changed because you'll walk into a Target and think, wow, this is all going to end up in a landfill. 5 years ago, I walked into a Target, like, wow, I'm in Target. This is amazing. And now you just change how you look at the world. So that's when we know you've graduated.
I find the VOCs are so intense in those places that like I just get this like instant headache from all the plastic off-gassing. Just like
There is that. Even like you'll also notice, I mean, that's why I think it's a cool transformative process. Like even switching from like a Tide detergent to the sheets or an all natural brand, if you smell a regular Tide or fragrance product, I'll get a headache.
Yeah.
That's a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
You don't, and I think you're probably in this camp too of like, even if I smell like, of course, you're in New York, like Le Labo perfume and the whole cult following Diptyque. Like I used to love the smell of that stuff, and now if I smell it, I'll get a headache.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how without having, there are certain tests if you really want to get into the microplastics. There's a company based in the Bay called Million Marker where they could actually look at the presence of microplastics in you. I do more of the anecdotal, knowing that I can't smell or fragrance smells bad to me and noticing, I just feel better using products that I know I could read all the ingredients and I'm on the right path. I don't want to get analyzed, but I do work with a few clients who are on the full journey of being very quantitative in health and wanting to know, okay, I want to take the Million Marker test and I want to in 3 months figure out through the recommendations you made, how did I transform? And this is actually a lot of the longevity folks who are trying to improve because we're getting on a separate topic, but there is a lot of link to the decrease in sperm count and microplastics. So there is this interesting segment, especially men, I think in their 50s right now. I'm looking at you, not trying to enroll you immediately, but that they are one client we have who is trying to get off of medication by eliminating chemicals. So we're on that journey with him on seeing if that can happen, which we've already seen some positive results.
Amazing. Jill, thank you so much for your time today. Are you
Thanks
going to
for
go out and
having
enjoy
me.
the snow?
Yeah, I went out for a little bit, but I think I already went running, luckily. I'm going to try to get out another afternoon walk or something, but
I think where I am, I think the snow has stopped, but I'm in a cloud right now.
I'm on the 6th floor. It's coming down.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Jill, thanks so much. We'll put some links to your site, people, and ways for people to contact you, as you mentioned. And if you have links to I want to know about the
Recs. I take a top like Recs that like we give people. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The sweet spot is that like that RO filter, I literally have TMI, but I've given to like a guy I've like went on a date with, never saw again. He's like one of them. I'm like, okay, here you go. Like everyone's asking. I'm like, oh, didn't work out, but at least I helped his water filtration.
Modern love.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel, communicating the mission. But yeah, there's a few brands and things we love shouting out, the smaller.
Okay.
And then even I am writing a book. I should have said that. Oops. I'm writing a book. It comes out in April. So I've been reading all of the literature right now that's kind of out in the topic. I don't know if this is a good one. I just started, Fatal Conveniences. It's the guy who's on Netflix. There's a few books that I just encourage people to read, whether or not they want to pre-order mine. And that professor that I'm working with from NYU, he has the Poorer, Fatter, Sicker book, and it gets into a lot of data. He's a huge researcher, and he has a political science degree as well. So he really does cover the link between, how do we change policy, looking at the data and studies I'm doing in medicine around children, which is obviously the most concerning, to try to make some changes. So I'll send you a few book lex too.
Super. Okay. Send them our way. We'll put them in the show notes.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much, Jill. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was great. Some information on microplastics today from Jill Czarnik. What I got out of that was that It's difficult to eliminate all microplastics from our lives. The plastics are just ubiquitous. But what we can do is decrease the load on our bodies through some fairly simple things. Reverse osmosis filter, anything you can do to filter them out of your water, and having an air filter, and watching out for those single-use plastics. I've been paying a lot more attention to the things that food comes in, about heating things in any kind of plastic container. That's a huge no-no now. And even the cup that you get at your to-go coffee might be paper on the outside, but there's probably some kind of plastic on the inside keeping it from leaking. So things to pay attention to. We're going to get with Just Try This and a few things that are going on around here after a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Fatty 15. The story here is that Fatty 15 co-founder Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson discovered C15 while working with the U.S. Navy to improve the health and welfare of aging dolphins. Just a little shout out to our super aging dolphin listeners out there. Her discovery marks the first essential fatty acid to be found in over 90 years. C15 is known to work in a few ways. It repairs age-related damage to our cells, it protects our cells from future breakdown, boosts mitochondrial energy output, and activates those pathways in the body that help regulate things like sleep and mood. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish your C15 levels and restore your long-term health. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/ageist and using the code ageist at checkout.
So this week, here in Lower Manhattan. So the big news is this other media property I've been working on called Super Age. This thing is like a rocket. We gained, look at the data this morning, something like 130,000 people signed up for Super Age last week. So I've just never seen anything grow like this. I'm super proud of it. So if you haven't signed up, please go to superage.com and sign up for the Super Age newsletter. Right now, we're calling it The Mindset. It comes out Mondays and Thursdays, so you want to check that out. What else is going on around here? Well, you know, the endless discussions of my knee. I'm sorry to bore you with this, but what I'm finding here is this is an example of agency, that investigation and continuing to talk to people about what can possibly happen. I'm just going to tell you where, like when I was in Utah, there was really two things. Well, no, it wasn't even two things. There was one thing, total knee replacement. Why? Because anytime somebody my age walks into a doctor's office and you have osteoarthritis in the knee, that's it. We're just going to take it out and put a new one in. Because most of the people that are my age, they're, I'm sorry to say, obese, pre-diabetic, they're not very active, and I mean, they're not looking to get much out of their knee. There are other people I've spoken to, and they're talking about partial knee replacement, but that may not work because it can come undone. And then I talked to a lovely gentleman at Hospital for Cecil Surgery, very renowned surgeon, and he wanted to do an osteotomy on me. And an osteotomy is a rather radical surgery. It's about cutting your femur and putting a wedge in there and changing the angle of it. And I was like, ooh, what's the recovery on that? Oh, that's about a year. Wow, okay. So the latest is I spoke to a guy, a surgeon. Why are these surgeons all guys? I don't know. I looked for a female surgeon to get some other opinions. They're really hard to find. So something called a focalplasty is what I'm looking at now. And a focalplasty, essentially what they do is, so your cartilage is what stays, it's what cushions the tibia and your femur. So your femur is the big thigh bone. The tibia is the bone on the lower part of the leg. And so you have some cartilage in there. And on mine, in certain places, it's worn away. So especially as I sort of bend the knee as it goes into flexion, those two parts of the bone become exposed. And then if I load that side, ouch. What happens is the two bones go together and I actually bruise the bone marrow, which is not so great. So his solution is to just essentially put something in there that just covers those parts of exposed bone. And that's my favorite outcome so far. So I got 2 more docs to speak to. I don't know how many I've spoken to, 6 or 8, and I've talked to all the PTs I can. Because the docs are going to say oh yeah, you can do whatever in 2 months. And the PTs are going to be real with you about what the recovery is actually like. So I've really learned my lesson over the years about investigating this stuff and talking to as many different people as you can. The thing to remember about surgeons, they're great, but they have a favorite hammer. And with their favorite hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you want to be sort of investigating, and I'm hoping to come to some kind of decision next week about what to do. This thing called a focalplasty seems so far like the most sensible thing I've heard. So we'll see. Anyway, so what's the takeaway here? For all of you out there, if you're thinking about doing something like this, or you have something that's a nagging problem, I know it's a total pain in the ass to be investigating, to make appointments with these doctors. What do they think? Talking to other professionals. It's really worth it. We have that ability. We can do it. You're probably going to get a better outcome out of it. So this week on Just Try This. We have this thing, this American event happening this weekend called the Super Bowl. And so football at its, there's a lot of parts to it, but it basically involves throwing a ball and somebody catching it. So you need to have really good eye-hand coordination if you are in the NFL and you're a receiver. You will see this thing and track it coming in and grab it. Now, one of the things that we've learned is that some of the sports that are best for longevity, especially for your brain, are things that involve eye-hand coordination with a moving ball. So ping pong. Ping pong is like amazing for this. It lights up all these different parts of your brain. There's very little impact on your body, like basically none. It's sort of an interesting thing to try. Badminton also. Tennis, a little more aerobic, a lot more lateral movement on that. Or everybody's favorite sport these days, pickleball. So the nice things about something like pickleball or even ping pong is you have the social element to it. So this week on Just Try This, I want you to think about some kind of activity you can do where your hand hits a ball. And try that out. I gotta tell you, when I'm in New York, I live in the Lower East Side, and it's very Asian, it's very Chinese here. And there are ping pong tables over in the park, and there are people there considerably older than me that are fearsome ping pong players. What the studies that I've seen around eye-hand coordination with these kind of sports is they're really good for your brain. They're really good for keeping the parts of you moving and focused on something, which, BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. We want some of that. So that's this week on Just Try This. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Ages podcast. Your time is important to you, and we are so grateful that you've decided to spend some of it with us. That's really nice. It makes us feel good that you're getting a value out of this and that we see you every week. So next week, we'll see you again. Everybody, have a wonderful week. Go out there and get some ping pong on. We'll see you soon. Take care now.